Yo guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to go over which abilities I think are the most useful on each legend and which ones are complete trash. So now we have 15 legends to cover, so we got to go fast and go rapid fire mode. Also guys, I know every YouTuber asks this and it's a bit annoying, but please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell if you enjoy these videos, of course, to help me grow this gaming channel. Alright, let's dive into it. Enjoy the video. So believe it or not, I don't have all the abilities, but I have seen most of them in action. So with some good old theory crafting, I'm sure we can do a pretty good job of evaluating them. Also, I'm waiting on access to their testing environment so I can actually try out all the abilities. Hopefully they give me that soon. So anyways, starting with Witch Queen. So for Witch Queen, it's kind of a no-brainer. This second one here is by far the most important because not only does it increase the debuff duration of their movement speed, it also decreases their jump by 50% at all 3 levels when the enemy is hit by a skill. And this is this ability is actually the one that makes Witch Queen completely broken, especially for team modes, all right? The second one, I think that's the most important, is the first one here because it increases the base attack damage and also increases her jump by 22% because as you guys know, Witch Queen is kind of, she's kind of squishy. So this ability actually makes her very hard to catch by the enemy. So when she's jumping 22% higher, especially when uses her skill and makes her even jump even higher, it makes it very difficult for the enemy to catch her. All right, so the other abilities are kind of whatever. So this third one here, I think it's completely dog trash. I mean, yes, the enemy takes a bit more damage when they're polymorph, but you know, how often does that happen, right? So that one you can completely just wash. This other one here, yes, like when you hit your enemy with basic attacks, it basically lowers the cooldown of her skill. Okay, it's not bad, but you know, compared to the first two, it's kind of whatever, right? And when it comes to her rare ability, I think this one is super pay to win, by the way, because when it's at level 1, it happens literally once per game. It happens only once every 2 minutes, which, you know, every game is about 3 minutes long, right? So it only happens once a game. At level 3, though, it happens basically 3 times a game, or it can happen 3 times a game because this effect activates once every 1 minute. You know what? This ability is such a hit or miss. It can come in clutch, especially like if you're in a losing game and it just happens to polymorph the entire enemy team, and you know, you guys can have a pretty clutch moment. But it's kind of useless in duo and battle royale, in my opinion, especially it's like when it's at level 1 because it does only happen once a game, right? So yeah, it's not that great. If you guys are playing Witch Queen, definitely go for this first and second ability, and that's gonna make her super OP. So let's talk about Master Cat next, and this one's kind of tricky in my opinion because it depends on your playstyle. So for me, I typically don't use my ultimate at all. I just kind of get 3 stacks and that's it. And the reason I do that is because with Mind Focus and Swift Steps, it's so good to just have your ultimate up but not using it, right? So with Mind Focus on, you do 15% more damage at level 1 when you have your ultimate up, and also 10% 5% when you have 1 or 2 stacks. So that's really good. And combined with Swift Steps, that makes it really OP because when you have your ultimate up, you move 8% faster at level 1 and 16% faster at level 3, which is really good. Plus, it also increases the duration of your ultimate by 3.5 seconds, which is just absolutely perfect when you have these 2 abilities combined. All right, so that's the main reason I don't really use my ultimate, is because I already have these huge buffs when my ultimate is up. Now, if you're a player who loves to use your ultimate and you're not really worried about, you know, risking getting third party or anything like that, I think obviously if you have your rare ability that increases your ultimate damage by 18% at level 1 and 32% at level 3, I mean, obviously this is a no-brainer, right? But that's if you like to use your ultimate. The other one is obviously agile movement will be the other one that you want to use, because this one actually increases your damage and movement speed after you use your ultimate for 10 seconds, which is incredibly useful for stacking up your ultimate again. So as for Fury, I think it's kind of a mediocre ability, and unfortunately I have it at level 2, but I mean, it's okay when you're below 50% HP, but I mean, nobody's aiming for that, so yeah, I think it's kind of a whatever ability. So let's talk about the K-pop star next. And unfortunately for me, the best ability in my opinion is Sharpness. It's the only ability that I don't have. And I think this ability is so good because it increases the basic attack damage by 12% at level 1 when either the ultimate or the skill is not available, which should be all the time, right? Because if you guys play Snow, typically you're using his ultimate or his skill like right before you use his base attack anyways. So anyways, I think that's by far the best. And his second best ability in my opinion is Pursuit, because this increases your movement speed and your basic attack damage by 6% and 8% at level 1 when you haven't taken any damage for 3 seconds. So that one is really good depending on what kind of playstyle you do, of course. So in my opinion, this is probably the second best one, but But I do have to say his rare ability is really good for team modes because it resets the skill cooldown whenever you kill an enemy. And that's really good for team modes because that can actually happen a lot. Completely useless in duo, in my opinion. Can be useful in battle royale sometimes, but you know what? Not that useful. So, definitely a good one in team modes. I would say this is probably the second best one in team modes. Sharpness being the number one. Secret Blow, completely useless because this only triggers when you are below 35% HP, which, typically shouldn't really happen that often. And so I'm going to pass that one. And Blitzblade, I do have it equipped. And this one is not that good either because it only happens once every 15 seconds. So we got Ducky and Swan next, and I think this one's kind of a no-brainer. Her best ability is Upright Growth, in my opinion, because this one gives you more damage and less damage taken in Ducky form for every stack of ultimate you have. And that is so good. Look, at level 3, I mean, you do 15% more damage and receive 24% damage less, and that's just so OP. And her second best one, in my opinion, is Overflowing Courage. I mean, this one's completely useless for Battle Royale, but it's pretty good for duos and 3v3 modes because this one gives you a stack of ultimate every time you revive and has a chance to get a second one, which is just really good, right? Obviously, useless in Battle Royale because you die. Okay, so in my opinion, her first two abilities are complete trash, so don't even worry about it. And of course, with my terrible luck, her first ability is the only one I have, and of course, it's at level 2, and that's just completely useless. So for her rare ability, I think it's kind of a hit or miss. It really depends how often you're hitting the enemy. It obviously shines more in 3v3 modes because you can hit multiple enemies at once, which could increase your duration of your ultimate form by quite a bit. Otherwise, in duos or battle royale, when people are running a lot and you're not hitting that much, it's just not that useful. And so it really depends how good you are in Swan form as well. Okay, so we got the meme legend next. I mean, with her recent buff to her ultimate damage, which I still don't understand why, because she gets her ultimate all the time. Striking the VO is by far her best ability, which is her rare ability. I mean, the fact that it increases her damage by 30% coming out of ultimate at just level 1, combined with that buff and combined with whatever else damage she already does, like you can literally 100-0 somebody, and that's just super broken. So of course at level 3, 60% more damage. That just completely pay to win. So I would say her second best ability is probably Dancing Blades because this increases her damage by 14% at level 1 for 12 seconds after smashing it full. Very useful in Battle Royale, very useful in 3v3s. Not that useful in 1v1s, but still pretty decent. So anyways, I would say that's her second best ability. So I would say the next best one is Invisible Shadow because it does increase your movement speed by quite a bit when you're in your ultimate form, and that's really good for playing mind games with your opponents. I would say Dense Fog, not that useful because the duration increase is just not that good. Even at level 2, it's only 1.5 seconds. And Rage is not useful at all because nobody's planning for an HP below 40%. And I think all abilities that does require an HP to be below a certain percentage, it is trash in my opinion. All right, so we got Kaiser next, and I would say this one is probably the most dynamic one. It really depends on the mode you're playing, on the map you're playing, and of course your playstyle. So obviously Loud Roar, which is his rare ability, I think is by far the best in general. And this one is just so good because it increases your movement speed, decreases your damage taken, and also decreases your skill cooldown every time you get hit. All right, so obviously that's kind of a no-brainer. So in my opinion, his second best ability is Strong Heart because not only does it decrease the energy requirement for his ultimate, it also decreases the duration for his stun and freeze, which means it can really mess up your opponent's read on you, right? Especially at level 3 because that's 25%. So all of Kaiser's abilities are actually pretty good. Even the first one increases your max HP up to 16% at level 3, which is really good. So Heavy Blow is also really good for small maps because you can just knock them off the map really easily. And Tenacious Spirit, that one's not bad for 3v3s because when you take a lot of hits, very often you obviously gain a movement speed and decreases damage you take, especially when you combine it with Loud Roar. All right, so we got Peter next. I would say his best ability is his rare ability Earth Roaring Sword. I mean, this one makes his jump skill so broken. It makes it almost impossible to dodge because the range gets increased by quite a bit, and also it makes the AoE much bigger and it drags you back in, which is absolutely terrible to fight against. And his second best ability, it could vary depending on your playstyle. So as for his second best ability, I would say Heavy Sword is probably the best one because it does push your enemy quite far, and that's very useful for many different modes. So I would say Perseverance Strike is only good in certain scenarios, especially when you want to engage because it does increase your damage. Otherwise, it's just not that good for drawn out fights. Swift Moves is okay in 3v3 modes sometimes if you want to come back for a hard clutch. Otherwise, not that useful. Flexible Blades, I don't even understand this one that well. Still, like maybe if you miss your ultimate a lot, like me, it could be useful. Otherwise, you probably don't need this. So we got the Hammer Lolly next, and I kind of have a controversial take on this one, and it's going to be based on your personal preference as well. Hidden Powers is actually my number one ability because this one increases your damage by quite a bit when your ultimate and your skill is on cooldown, which should happen very, very often. So Faster is actually my second favorite ability for her because it increases her movement speed, and I think that's very useful in many, many different scenarios. So I personally hate Move Aside because I just don't think it's that useful. As for Empower Landmine, I think a lot of you guys actually do like this one because, I mean, you do this combo where you ultimate and then you drop your stun and then you hit them, and that does increase damage. But also, when you don't have your ultimate, it's really hard to land that ground skill because many good players will be able to kind of see that coming and just dodge it. As for her rare ability, many of you guys love that ability and think it's super OP. I actually think it's much easier to fight Alice's with this ability than the ones who don't because of the coverage of the landmine. Anyways, so obviously that's just my personal preference, and a lot of you guys are going to disagree with that one, but hey, it is what it is. So we got Ravi next, and I think this one's kind of a no-brainer when it comes to the best ability. Instant Awakening is just so good because it increases your basic attack every time you hit a skill, and Ravi is just always doing combos from skill to basic attack, so this one is obviously the best one. So I would say his second best ability is actually Dark Flame Energy because when he has his ultimate up, that movement speed increase is really, really useful, and also it gives him a lot more damage when it comes to his ultimate. So anyways, that's just my personal preference. The other one that's really good, Light and Darkness, is also pretty good in my opinion because it does increase his damage by quite a lot when your HP is above 50%, and also decreases the damage you take when your HP is below 50%. And obviously this one, it's really based on your personal playstyle. I think this one is really useful, especially for pretty decent players. But anyways, the one that I can't really commentate on is his rare ability because I don't really know how works when it comes to the range. It doesn't really tell you what that range increase is like, and I don't think I've ever seen it in action before, so I don't know. Anyways, if you guys do know, let me know in the comments below. And for Complete Combustion, I think this one's completely useless, so let's not talk about that one. Okay, so next up we got my favorite legend, Cindy, and you guys are gonna laugh at this, but my favorite ability on her is Healthy Body, which increases her HP by 8% at level 1 and 16% at level 3. The reason I like this one is because her HP is quite high already, so that 8% is quite a lot. Recovery Strike, completely useless in my opinion. Perseverance is pretty good when it comes to level 3. Level 1 it's okay because it's help her, charge her ultimate pretty quick. But anyways, not super significant. Firm Commitment, I would say this one is good if you're a beginner because you might miss your dive kick quite often. But, if you're a good player, you shouldn't be missing your dive kick that often. So that means your skill or your ultimate is going to be up all the time. And for this to even activate, both has to be down and, just not that useful. As for that rare ability, I don't think it's that useful either because it's hard to miss Cindy's ult, I think. I know coming from me, I miss my ult all the time, but hey, for the average player, you guys shouldn't be missing your ults that much. So not that useful. So anyways, for me, number 1, Healthy Body. Number 2, I would say Perseverance. So we got Don Q next, and I would say this one is going to be kind of tricky because all of them are actually quite good. So it really depends on what mode you're playing and also what role you're playing. So if you're playing a tank and you're using your ultimate a lot, obviously Roses onto his cheer is pretty good for the decreased damage, and his rare ability is also decent for that because obviously he can take less damage in his ultimate form. But I would say his rare ability is kind of meh. I would probably swap this out with Iron Will of the Night because then you can get your ultimate even more often. I would say that's more useful because with his recent buff, where he takes less damage during his ultimate form anyways, his rare ability is kind of whatever. So in solo modes like Duo and Battle Royale, I would say Enhanced Shield is probably the best because it helps you move faster in your skill and also push your enemies back further, which means you have a higher chance to knock them off the map. So I would say for Knight's Courage, it's kind of trash at level 1, but at level 3 it becomes kind of god tier because 15% increased range on your ground attack is just really good because your ground attack is very good for punishing your enemies. So with Hook, I would say this one's based on personal preference again, and it really depends on your playstyle. As you guys know, I play the Monkey Hook playstyle, and I like to move around a lot, so my favorite ability is obviously the first one because it just helps her move much faster. At level 3, it's 8%, which is really, really good. My second favorite ability is actually this one here. So Perseverance, which I have, and I have them both, which is really lucky for me, because this one basically helps me get her ultimate faster, and without her ultimate, she just doesn't do that good damage, unless you can land your skills, which most people can dodge these days. So Quick Reload is probably her worst ability in my opinion. And as for Overheated Pistol, it's actually quite good, especially if you engage with your skill. But I don't use her skill that often, so it's not really for me, but I can see a lot of you guys liking this one. Overclock, obviously, it's really good. Also, it's a great combination with Perseverance because you can get your ultimate quite often. So as for Rapunzel, I would say her best ability is probably You Won't Get Away because it increases the ground damage by quite a bit, and also it brings the stun from 0.5 seconds to 1 second, which is huge. So as for me, her second best ability is probably Endless Revenge because it increases the skill damage by quite a bit, and also it resets the skill cooldown every time you smash an enemy, which is very useful for 3v3 modes and Battle Royale. So her third ability, it's kind of mediocre. It increases her damage by a little bit. It's pretty straightforward. Her fourth ability is completely useless. I have it at level 2 and I don't even use it because it's just so trash. I refuse to use it. Her rare ability is pretty okay as well because it only activates when you smash an enemy, and it applies the ultimate hit effect, which is pretty good from your basic attacks. So anyways, I would say the first two are by far the best. So we got the newest character next, Nui, and I would say I have her best ability, luckily, and that's Solar Eclipse because it increases your basic attack damage whenever your skill is not available, which should always be the case. All right, her second best ability, I would say, is Blazing Hot because it increases the skill damage. So now when you have these two combined, you're just dealing a lot of damage. So as for the first one, I think it could be okay if you can hit an enemy directly in the center, so it's hard for them to get out. So as for Eternal Blessing, I would say this is the only HP-based ability that's really broken because this one increases the movement speed by 20% at level 3, and that is just scary because you can almost never catch Nui and she can have a very good engage on you. So as for her rare ability, I think it's pretty good, but I just don't think it's that significant, so that's why it's not in the top 2. So the last one, we got Flare, and before her nerf, Catch Me If You Can was by far her best ability because it stun enemies and it can just destroy them. But now I don't know if it's that good anymore because when you use your air skill on somebody, you have a hard time hitting them, and by the time you do get to hit them, they've already recovered from the debuff, okay? So I'm not sure, I'm not so sure about that one anymore. Burning Cannon is definitely good in my opinion. I would say this is definitely top 1 or 2, and this one is just good because when you have your ultimate, it increases your damage of your basic attack and your skill, and that's always great. So as for her second best ability, I really don't know. It really depends on her rare ability, which I have yet to see anybody have, and this one looks really interesting because her basic attack can actually deal an area damage that can do damage over time, but it only activates every 15 seconds, but it lasts 5 seconds, so you have a 10-second gap. And I don't really know. I have to see it for myself, and I think I think this would be my second best ability. According to the way it's written out. So I would say not knowing what the rare ability does, still one shot left is probably her second best ability because not only does it refund some cooldown when you hit an enemy with your skill, it also increases the projectile speed, which is really, really good. Well, anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Comment below and let me know what you guys think is the best ability in the entire game. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to smash that like button in the face and subscribe to join the MoBo squad. And guys, be humble, be kind to others, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.